February 28, 1942. The desert does not forgive mistakes. Private Daniel Mercer feels the cold first, not the heat everyone warns about, the burning, endless sun, but the kind of cold that creeps in before dawn, when the wind cuts across the sand like a blade. He pulls his wool collar tighter, eyes fixed on the black horizon. They are not supposed to be here. The map in his pocket says British-controlled territory. The orders, whispered down the line, say something else entirely. Observe, confirm, do not engage. But the tension in the air tells a different story. Something is already moving out there in the dark. A truck engine coughs in the distance. Mercer freezes. Sergeant Collins raises a hand, silent, precise. The entire unit drops low behind a ridge of sand and broken rock. No one speaks. Even breathing feels too loud. Another engine joins the first, then another. Mercer presses his cheek into the cold grit and peers through his field glasses. At first, there's nothing. Then shapes, headlights flicker briefly, quickly killed. A convoy, not British. German, someone whispers. Collins doesn't answer. He doesn't need to. The silhouettes are wrong. The spacing is tighter. The movement more cautious. These men are not just traveling, they're sneaking. Mercer's pulse begins to pound. This isn't a patrol. This is the beginning of something. A faint metallic clink carries across the wind. Doors opening. Boots hitting sand. Voices low, urgent, unfamiliar. Mercer strains to hear, but the language dissolves in the wind. Then a single flare shoots into the sky. It burns white, turning night into harsh daylight for one blinding second. And in that moment, Mercer sees everything. Dozens of vehicles, armed men fanning out in formation, heavy equipment being unloaded, crates, long barrels, something that looks like artillery. This isn't reconnaissance. This is preparation for war. The flare dies, and darkness crashes back down. But it's too late. The image is burned into Mercer's mind. Collins leans in, his voice barely a breath. We've seen enough. We pull back, now. But Mercer doesn't move, because out there, beyond the convoy, he sees something else. A second line of lights, farther away, bigger, coming closer. His throat tightens. Sergeant, that's not all of them. Collins turns, just for a second, and in that second Mercer sees it, the flicker of doubt. Then, from the darkness, the first shot cracks, not aimed at them. A signal, and suddenly, the desert comes alive. The shot echoes across the desert, and then everything moves at once. Mercer flinches as engines roar to life in the darkness ahead. What had been a silent convoy seconds ago now becomes a machine in motion. Headlights snap on, cutting through the night like blades. Orders are shouted in a language he can't fully understand. But the urgency is unmistakable. This was planned. Fall back. Sergeant Collins hisses, grabbing Mercer's shoulder. But the desert has already betrayed them. A beam of light sweeps across the ridge fast, searching. It passes over one soldier, then another, and then it stops, right on Mercer. For one frozen second, neither side moves. Then the machine gun opens up. Sand erupts around them as bullets tear into the ridge. The silence of the desert shatters into chaos. Mercer throws himself flat, heart slamming against his ribs as rounds snap overhead. Move, move. Collins roars. The unit scatters, sliding down the back of the ridge into darkness. Mercer scrambles, boots slipping in loose sand, rifle clutched tight. Behind him, the ridge explodes under sustained fire. They weren't supposed to be seen. Now they are being hunted. A truck engine surges closer. Too close. Mercer glances back and wishes he hadn't. Headlights crest the ridge. A vehicle pushes forward, cutting across the terrain with terrifying speed. A mounted gun spits fire into the darkness, tracing their retreat. They're flanking. Someone yells. Collins doesn't hesitate. Split, regroup at point echo. The order hits Mercer like a blow. Splitting means survival, but it also means leaving men behind. He hesitates, just for a second, and in that second, he hears a scream. Private Ellis goes down, caught in the open. Mercer turns instinctively, raising his rifle, but Collins slams into him, forcing him forward. You stop, you die. Collins snarls. Mercer stumbles, torn between instinct and command. The screaming stops abruptly behind him. There's no time to look back. The desert ahead is darker now. The terrain rougher, rock formations rising like jagged teeth. Mercer runs blindly, lungs burning, every step heavier than the last. Gunfire fades behind them, but not completely. They're still being tracked. After what feels like hours, Collins finally drops behind a cluster of rocks, signaling the others to do the same. What's left of the unit gathers, breathing hard, eyes wide, faces pale under the faint starlight. Fewer than before, much fewer. No one speaks about it. Collins pulls out a map, hand steady despite everything. They weren't supposed to be here, he mutters. Not in this strength. Mercer swallows hard, still staring back into the darkness they escaped. Because he knows something Collins hasn't said out loud. That wasn't a patrol. That was the opening move, and somewhere out there, more are coming. A distant rumble rolls across the desert. Not trucks. Something heavier. Mercer looks up, dread creeping in. "Sergeant, you hear that?" Collins does. The rumble grows louder. At first, it feels like distant thunder rolling, almost natural. But Mercer knows better. There are no storms in this sky. No clouds. No mercy. Only engines. Heavy ones. The ground beneath him begins to vibrate. A subtle tremor that crawls up through his boots and into his bones. Around him, the men shift uneasily, exchanging glances they don't dare put into words. Collins folds the map slowly. Too slowly. Then, in a voice stripped of doubt, he says, "Tanks." The word lands like a death sentence. Mercer closes his eyes for a moment. British command said the enemy wouldn't move armor this deep. Not without weeks of preparation. Not without warning. But the desert in front of him is already proving that intelligence wrong. Everything about tonight is wrong. A faint glow begins to rise on the horizon. Not sunlight. Not yet. Headlights. Dozens of them. They crest the distant ridge like a silent wave. Beams cutting across the sand in perfect alignment. Then the shapes follow low, wide, unmistakable. Armored silhouettes. Mercer grips his rifle tighter, though he knows how useless it is against steel. They're advancing in formation. Collins whispers, "This isn't a raid. It's an offensive." The realization hits the group all at once. This isn't just a hidden convoy or a forward patrol. This is the beginning of a full-scale push. Mercer's mouth goes dry. Where are they heading? Collins doesn't answer immediately. His eyes track the line of tanks, calculating, measuring distance and direction. When he finally speaks, it's quieter than before. East, toward British positions, toward supply lines, toward men who have no idea this is coming. A sharp crack cuts through the air. Not gunfire. A radio. One of the soldiers fumbles with a field set, trying to catch a signal. Static hisses loudly in the silence, broken by fragments of distant voices overlapping. Frantic. Incomplete. Movement confirmed. Repeat. Massive. No authorization. This cannot. All units stand by. Then nothing. The signal dies. Mercer feels a cold dread settle deeper than before. If command doesn't know what's happening, then no one is ready. The tanks continue their slow, unstoppable advance. And then something changes. The lead vehicle halts. One by one, the others follow. The engines don't shut off, but the formation stops moving. Mercer frowns. Why stop? Collins doesn't reply. His gaze shifts slightly to the sky. Mercer follows it. At first, he sees nothing. Then, a faint, distant drone. Growing louder, faster. Aircraft, low and approaching. Mercer's breath catches as dark shapes sweep across the stars. Barely visible, moving with terrifying precision. Not British. Not friendly. Collins exhales slowly, the weight of realization crushing down. They're coordinating, he says. Ground and air. Together? Mercer feels the scale of it hit him all at once. This isn't just an attack. It's a carefully timed strike. The tanks bellow. The bomb doesn't whistle. It screams. A falling roar that tears through the sky and drills straight into Mercer's chest. For a fraction of a second, everything freezes. The tanks below. The men behind the rocks. Even the wind itself seems to stop. Then the desert explodes. The blast slams into the ridge ahead, throwing sand, fire, and shattered rock high into the air. The shockwave hits Mercer a heartbeat later, knocking him flat, ears ringing, vision flashing white. Another bomb follows, and another. The aircraft sweep low, their engines howling as they unleash a precise, devastating pattern of destruction. The tank formation below remains untouched. The bombs are falling beyond them. Ahead, toward British lines, Mercer drags himself up, coughing through dust and smoke. The sky is alive now, dark shapes cutting across the growing light of dawn, dropping payloads with terrifying accuracy. They're hitting our positions, he gasps. Collins nods grimly, softening them up. The words feel clinical, cold, but the reality is anything but. Distant flashes ripple across the horizon, each one a detonation, each one a piece of the front line being torn apart. Mercer imagines the men stationed there, half awake, unprepared, caught in the open. They don't even know why this is happening. A deafening crack splits the air. Closer this time. One of the bombs lands short to close. The explosion hurls debris into their position, peppering the rocks with shrapnel. Down, Collins shouts. Mercer presses into the earth as fragments rain around them. A soldier nearby cries out, clutching his arm. Blood already soaking through his sleeve. There's nowhere to run. The sky controls everything now. The bombing run continues for what feels like an eternity, but in reality, it's minutes. Precise, measured, enough to break defenses before the real assault begins. Because Mercer can see it already, The tanks are moving again. Slow at first, then faster. Rolling forward into the smoke they didn't create but fully intend to exploit. "Sergeant," Mercer says, his voice barely holding. "We have to warn them." Collins is already thinking the same thing. He looks east toward British command, miles away across open desert, then back at the advancing armor. There isn't enough time, unless someone moves now. Collins turns to the group, his face hard, resolved. "We split again. Small teams. Fast as you can. Get to command and report everything." He locks eyes with Mercer. "You're with me." Mercer nods, though his stomach tightens. He knows what this means. Running through open desert, with aircraft overhead, and tanks advancing behind them. This isn't a retreat. It's a race, and they're already behind. Another wave of planes roars overhead, lowered this time. Mercer feels the air shake as they pass, close enough to see the dark crosses on their wings. The war has arrived, not slowly, not gradually, but in one explosive, coordinated night. Collins gives the signal. "Move." Mercer runs until the world narrows to breath and pain. Each step sinks into loose sand, dragging him back, slowing him down. His lungs burn, throat dry, legs screaming for rest, but he doesn't stop. He can't. Behind him, the desert still trembles. Ahead, the horizon burns. Columns of smoke twist into the sky, black against the rising sun. The bombing has done its work. Even from miles away, Mercer can see the damaged positions shattered. Supply lines torn open, the shape of order collapsing into chaos. Collins runs beside him, steady, relentless. "Keep moving," he barks, not even looking back. They crest a low ridge and what lies beyond hits Mercer like a blow. The British forward camp, or what's left of it. Tents are gone, replaced by smoldering wreckage. Trucks lie overturned, wheels still spinning. Craters scar the earth in every direction. Men move through the smoke, some running, some crawling, some not moving at all. And through it all, confusion. No formation, no clear command, just survival. Mercer slows, stunned. They didn't see it coming. "No," Collins says. "They didn't." A shell lands somewhere to their right, close enough to feel. Not from the air this time. From the ground. The tanks have begun firing. Mercer snaps back to reality. They're already in range. Collins scans the horizon. Through the haze, dark shapes are emerging, small at first, then growing larger. Advancing. Relentless. "Not yet," Collins mutters. "But they will be." They push into the camp, weaving through wreckage and wounded men. A medic shouts for help, dragging someone across the dirt. Another soldier stares blankly at nothing, ears still ringing from the bombardment. Mercer grabs the first officer. He sees a lieutenant, dazed but standing. "Sir, enemy armor mass formation moving east under air cover." The lieutenant blinks, trying to process it. "That's not possible. We've had no reports." "You have one now." Collins cuts in sharply. "They're coming. And they're coordinated. You need to pull back or reinforce now." Another explosion interrupts them. Closer this time. The lieutenant turns, shaken, eyes darting across the chaos. There is no chain of command left to follow. Only decisions. He nods, finally. "I'll get this to HQ. Hold position if you can." Collins doesn't respond. He knows holding position here is a death sentence. Mercer looks back toward the horizon. The smoke is thinning now, and through it, he can see them clearly. Tanks, dozens of them, closing the distance. The ground shakes with each movement, a steady, unstoppable rhythm. Behind them, infantry spreads out, using the destruction as cover. This isn't just an advance, it's a breakthrough. Mercer's grip tightens on his rifle, though it feels smaller than ever before. "Sergeant, what do we do?" Collins watches the approaching line, jaw set. Then he says the only thing left to say. "We slow them down." Mercer stares at him. "With what?" "Rifles. A handful of survivors." The first tank breaks through the smoke like a steel predator. Mercer sees it clearly now, low, angular, unstoppable. Its turret turns with slow, deliberate precision, scanning the ruined camp as if choosing its next victim. Then it fires. The shell slams into what remains of a supply truck, detonating it in a burst of flame and twisted metal. The shockwave ripples outward, knocking men off their feet. Mercer flinches, instinct screaming at him to run. But Collins doesn't move. "Listen to me," the sergeant says, grabbing Mercer by the collar and forcing eye contact. His voice is calm for the chaos around them. Tanks are blind without support. They rely on infantry. You break that. You buy time. Mercer swallows hard. "With what?" Collins gestures around them. "The wreckage. Abandoned gear. Opportunity. Find explosives. Fuel. Anything that burns. We don't stop them, we slow them." Another tank emerges from the haze, then another. The line is growing, pushing forward with terrifying confidence. Behind them, Enemy infantry spreads out, rifles ready, advancing through the smoke. They are not rushing. They don't need to. Mercer nods, forcing himself to move. He darts toward an overturned truck, its cargo spilled across the sand. Crates lie cracked open, ammunition, rations, and then his eyes lock onto a wooden box marked with stenciled warnings. Explosives. He pries it open with shaking hands. Inside sticks of dynamite, fuses, detonators. Not much, but enough to matter. Sergeant, he calls. Collins appears beside him instantly. Good. We'll rig a choke point. Mercer glances around. The camp is too open, too exposed, but just beyond it there, a narrow pass between two rocky outcrops. The tanks will have to funnel through it to maintain their advance. A bottleneck. Collins sees it too. That's our spot. They move fast, dragging what they can carry, ignoring the chaos behind them. Gunfire crackles now closer, sharper. The enemy infantry has reached the edge of the camp. Time is gone. At the pass, Mercer drops to his knees, hands working quickly despite the tremor in his fingers. He's never done this under fire before, never with stakes like this. Collins sets charges with practiced efficiency. His movements precise, controlled. Wire them here, and here, he orders. We want the lead tank crippled. Lock the rest. Mercer nods, focusing, shutting out everything else, the noise, the fear, the approaching enemy. Just the task, just the moment. A bullet cracks against the rock nearby, sending chips flying. They've been spotted. Hurry. Collins snaps. Mercer finished the last connection, sweat dripping into his eyes despite the morning chill. Done. Collins checks it once, then nods. Good. Now we wait. They take cover behind the rocks, breaths shallow, eyes fixed on the approach. The sound comes first. Engines. Closer now. Louder. The aircraft scream out of the sky. Mercer's world fractures into motion and noise, engines howling. They're tearing apart as the planes dive straight toward the pass. Their shadows race across the rocks, swallowing the ground beneath him. They've seen us, he shouts. Collins doesn't look up. His eyes are locked on the tank. Hold, he snaps. The lead tank inches forward, its metal tracks grinding against stone as it enters the narrow gap. Behind it, a second vehicle looms, waiting its turn. Infantry spreads along the flanks, rifles raised, scanning for threats. And above, the planes are seconds away. Mercer's grip tightens on the detonator. His instincts are screaming now. Every nerve in his body is telling him to run, to dive, to survive. But Collins doesn't move. Wait, he barks again. The first aircraft opens fire. Machine gun rounds rake the rocks, sparks and fragments exploding around them. Mercer ducks instinctively, the detonator clutched tight against his chest. Too early, and it's wasted. Too late, and they die here. The tank rolls deeper into the pass. Halfway. Perfect. Collins' voice cuts through everything. Now. Mercer slams the trigger. The world erupts. A deafening explosion tears through the pass. Fire and rock bursting upward in a violent column. The lead tank disappears in the blast, swallowed whole, its armor ripped apart as the ground beneath it collapses. The shockwave hits Mercer like a hammer, throwing him back against the rocks. His ears ring, vision blurred, chest heaving for air. But even through the chaos, he sees it. The pass is blocked. The destroyed tank lies twisted across the gap, its wreckage wedged between the rock walls. Flames pour from its hull, black smoke rising fast into the sky. Behind it, the second tank grinds to a halt. Trapped. For a moment, just a moment, the advance stops. We did it. Mercer gasps, but Collins isn't celebrating. Move, he shouts, already dragging Mercer to his feet. Because the aircraft haven't stopped. The second plane dives lower, releasing its payload. Mercer barely has time to react. Run. The bomb hits the edge of the pass. The explosion is smaller than before, but closer. Much closer. The blast hurls Mercer forward, slamming him into the sand. Pain explodes through his shoulder, his vision spinning as dust and smoke engulf everything. For a few seconds, there is nothing. No sound, no movement, just ringing silence. Then, a voice. Faint. Mercer, get up. He coughs, dragging in air thick with dust. His body protests, but he forces himself to move, pushing up onto one arm. Collins is there, blood running down the side of his face, but still standing, still fighting. Behind them, chaos erupts. Enemy infantry is pouring toward the pass, scrambling over rocks, firing blindly into the smoke. The tanks are stalled, but not for long. They're adapting. They'll clear it, Collins says, breath ragged. We bought minutes. That's all. Mercer looks back at the burning wreckage. The gunfire closes in from every direction. Mercer barely has time to catch his breath before Collins is pulling him back into motion. The narrow pass is no longer a hiding place, it's a trap waiting to collapse. Fall back to the ridge. Collins orders. They move fast, stumbling over rock and sand, the sound of enemy boots and shouted commands echoing behind them. Bullets snap through the air, striking stone, kicking up dust at their heels. Mercer's shoulder burns with every step, but he forces himself forward. Pain means he's still alive. They reach the ridge just as the first enemy. Soldiers spill through the smoke, below silhouettes, moving quickly, aggressively. Using the wrecked tank as cover, they are organized, disciplined, and relentless. Collins drops behind a shallow depression and raises his rifle. Hold them here as long as we can. Mercer follows, taking position beside him. From this height, he can see everything: the shattered pass, the stalled tanks, the advancing infantry spreading out like a dark tide. And beyond them, more vehicles, more men. The scale of it is overwhelming. This isn't just one column, Mercer mutters. No, Collins replies. It's the whole line breaking through. A shot cracks from Collins' rifle. One of the advancing figures drops instantly. Mercer fires next, his hands steadier now, fear sharpening into focus. Another enemy soldier falls, but it barely slows the advance. There are too many. The enemy returns fire. Bullets rip into the ridge, forcing Mercer lower. Dirt sprays into his face as rounds impact inches from his head. They're flanking again, he shouts. Collins sees it to groups peeling off, moving wide to encircle their position. Smart, efficient, deadly. We can't hold this, Mercer says, the truth hitting hard. Collins doesn't argue. Instead, he scans the horizon one last time east, toward where British command should be. His jaw tightens. Then he makes a decision. You're going, he says. Mercer freezes. What? You're faster, lighter. You get through. You tell them everything: armor, air support, numbers. If command knows, they can respond. And you? Mercer asks, already knowing the answer. Collins reloads calmly, eyes never leaving the enemy below. I stay. Buy you time. Mercer shakes his head immediately. No, we can both. Not enough time. Collins cuts in sharply. That's the whole point. Another burst of gunfire forces them down again. The enemy is closer now to close. Collins grabs Mercer's jacket, pulling him in. Listen to me. This isn't about surviving. It's about warning them. Mercer's chest tightens. Every instinct tells him to stay, to fight, to not leave his sergeant behind. But deeper than that, he knows Collins is right. Someone has to make it. Collins releases him, already turning back to the fight. Go, now. Mercer hesitates just for a second. Then he runs. He sprints along the ridge, away from the gunfire, away from the only man still holding the line behind. Mercer runs alone. The gunfire behind him fades, but not completely. It lingers, echoing across the desert like a reminder of what he's left behind. Each step forward feels heavier than the last, as if the weight of that choice is pulling him back. But he doesn't stop. He can't. The sun is rising now, slow and merciless, casting long shadows across the sand. The cold of night is gone, replaced by a growing heat that drains strength with every passing minute. Mercer's throat is dry. His legs are shaking. Still he runs. Time is everything. After what feels like hours but can't be more than one, he sees it. A line on the horizon. Vehicles. Antennas. Movement. British command. Relief hits him so suddenly it almost brings him to his knees. He stumbles forward, raising one arm, trying to shout, but his voice barely carries. Contact front. A distant voice calls. Rifles lift. Men move into position. They don't recognize him. Mercer pushes harder, forcing out the words. Friendly. British forward unit. Two soldiers rush out to meet him, grabbing him before he collapses completely. They drag him toward the command post, a cluster of vehicles and radio equipment buzzing with activity. Inside, officers argue over maps spread across a makeshift table. Reports are inconsistent. Air activity confirmed, but no armor. Mercer breaks free, stumbling forward. There is armor. The room falls silent. All eyes turn to him. He's covered in dust, blood, barely able to stand, but his voice cuts through everything. Mass formation tanks, infantry, coordinated with air support. They've already broken through the forward camp. They're advancing east fast. An officer steps forward, disbelief etched across his face. That's impossible. We would have. You didn't. Mercer snaps, the last of his strength burning through him. We saw it. We tried to slow them. Sergeant Collins is still out there holding them back, but it won't last. Silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. The officers exchange looks, uncertainty giving way to realization. One of them turns sharply to the radio operator. Get me every unit in range. Now. The camp erupts into motion. Orders are shouted. Maps are redrawn. Signals are sent out across the desert, racing against an advancing force that is already too close. Mercer stumbles back, his job done but his mind still trapped behind him. At the ridge, with Collins, A distant rumble reaches them. Everyone hears it. Everyone turns. On the far horizon, dark shapes begin to appear, small at first, then growing. Tanks, still coming. The officer beside Mercer exhales slowly, the weight of it settling in. How long? He asks. Mercer stares at the approaching line, exhaustion and dread mixing into one hollow truth. Not long enough. The first artillery order is given. British guns begin to turn. But even as they prepare to respond, the reality is already clear. The attack wasn't a warning. It wasn't a probe. It was a